Hello, this is Scott Henderson with the Tompkins Mini Teach, and the teaching focus is for fourth graders, and we're going to be working on similarities and differences between two topics. It's the instructional unit focus comes from our Tompkins book. It's the 47th instruction on Venn diagrams. And what I first do is a read aloud. I'm not going to read it because it'd take up the whole time. But the read aloud is on alligators and crocodiles. And what I would do is I'd first ask some before questions, asking the students what are some similarities or differences between these two reptiles. During the reading, I would ask them questions to see if they're comprehending what I'm reading. And then afterwards, we could illustrate a Venn diagram of what we just read using comparing the similarities and differences from this book. Students, what we're first going to discuss is we're going to go over our unit that we went over yesterday on Venn diagrams. And first, I'd just like to ask, what is, when we're comparing two things, what's the definition of comparing? We're looking for what?
The same thing?
We're looking for the same thing. We're looking for similarities. And when we're contrasting, we are looking for, if I could have your hands. Carol.
Differences.
Yes, we're looking for differences, okay? Our short passage that we're going to read today is going to be on the North and the South poles, okay? So that has nothing to do with the read aloud we just did, but it's going to do something on a different passage, okay? Yesterday, remember that we talked about the differences between football and soccer. You know, different types of ball, one has a goal, one uses a goalpost, field's different. So those are the things that we're going to look at today. Just off the top of your head, what are some similarities between the North and the South Pole? Natasha.
They're cold.
They're cold. So you remember in our Venn diagram in the middle here, that's where we put our what?
Similarities.
Our similarities. So right here it is cold. Any other similarities you guys can think of? Carol.
Snow and ice.
Snow and ice, right. Any other similarities, Natasha?
They're poles.
They're poles. Can you describe that in
Well,
further
North
detail?
Pole and South Pole, they're either end of the Earth.
Okay.
Our Earth,
So the ones at the top and the bottom?
Our Earth rotates around the axis.
On an axis, okay.
It's between the North and South poles.
I'll just go ahead and put axis. Is that okay? You guys understand that? Okay. So what maybe are some differences that we can think of? Carol?
One is south and the other is north.
Okay. So one is north, the other south. Natasha?
Santa lives in the North Pole.
Santa Claus. That's a good one. And Carol?
Antarctica has ground underneath the ice and snow, and the North Pole is floating ice.
So we'll just put, for North Pole, we'll put floating ice. And for the South, we'll put, there's ground underneath it, correct? Okay. So again, like yesterday, we used our Venn diagram to compare and contrast football and soccer. And what we're going to do today is the same thing. We're going to read a short passage on the North and the South Pole, okay? So who would like to start reading this passage? All right, we'll go with Carol.
The Earth acts like a giant magnet. It has two poles, just like a magnet. They are called the North and South Poles. These poles are magnet poles, not tall metal or wooden poles. The area called the North Pole is floating ice, not land. This huge ice pack floats on the Arctic Ocean. The North Pole is very cold. In 1909, Robert E. Peary traveled by dog sled to the North Pole. He was the first known human to arrive there. In 1958, a submarine, the USS Nautilus, traveled under the pole. This proved that the pole really was made of floating ice.
Very good so far. So, if we can go back and review, did they talk about any similarities or differences in that passage? Can we think of anything that they've already said? Carol?
Well, they talked about the South Pole having, no, they didn't talk about the South Pole. They talked about the North Pole being floating ice.
Yeah, that's kind of what you said earlier. That the South Pole, that has ground underneath it. It's not floating ice, is that correct? And then the North Pole is just
Floating ice.
floating ice, correct? Natasha?
They're both magnet poles.
They're both magnet poles, so that's a similarity, okay? So that's something we put in the middle of our Venn diagram, okay? Natasha, would you like to go ahead and read the rest of the passage?
Sure. The South Pole is land covered by ice and snow. It is on the continent of Antarctica. This pole is the coldest and driest place on Earth. The temperature never gets warm enough to melt the ice and snow. There is a blanket of ice 2 miles, 3 kilometers thick over the pole. The first known person to reach this pole was Roald Amundsen in 1911. He also used dog sleds. His were pulled by 52 dogs. The 1,860 mile or 2,993 kilometer trip took 99 days.
Very good, Natasha. So, as you see in front of you, if you guys can go ahead and grab your Venn diagrams, and you can go back if you need to and look at the passage. I'm going to let you guys work together as a team. I want to give you about 2 minutes to do this, okay? So, let's review. In the middle of our Venn diagram, that's where we write what?
Things that are the same.
Things that are the same. And then you might want to label it up top. This would be for the North Pole on the left. And on the right, you would probably label it for the South Pole, okay? And those are where you're going to put their differences between the two, okay? So I'll give you guys about 2 minutes. I'll go ahead and set the timer over here for 2 minutes. And I'll let you guys discuss that together, okay? All right, we're going to get started.
Those are cold. Ice.
The first people there used dog sleds,
Ah.
but they were different people, so we could list the people on either side.
Different people. What was it? North Pole. Perry.
Robert E. Perry.
Everything going good so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Give you guys about another minute.
South Pole was Amundsen. South Pole has land underneath.
It's on the continent of Antarctica.
Continent. Antarctic.
I don't know what continent
Yeah. And North Pole's floating ice.
About 30 more seconds, guys.
they're cold. We put that.
They both use dog sleds. Yeah, we got that one. South Pole never gets warm enough to melt the ice. Doesn't say about the North Pole.
Okay, I think that's good, guys. So, our Venn diagram, did we come up with some similarities and differences? All right, let's start with the similarities. What are some things that you guys came up with together? Natasha.
Both people that discovered them used dog sleds.
They use dog sleds. Very good. Anything else you have to add, Carol?
Both cold and covered with ice.
Very good. All right, so what are some differences you guys came up with from the passage? Natasha?
They were discovered by 2 different people.
Very good. Anything that you found from differences, Carol, in the passage?
The South Pole is really a continent called Antarctica,
Mm-hmm.
and the North Pole is floating ice.
Floating ice. So, that's kind of just a review of what we did from yesterday, and we just read a different passage.